gonna be honest, I realised I was wearing the same clothes that I was wearing in my last video, which just makes it seem like whenever I come home I just wear the same clothes. Which is probably true. But I put a jumper over it, so it's practically okay. It's the least of my crimes. My hair also isn't washed and this jumper is dirty. But I have stolen my sister's shoes. I pinched them and they're amazing and she's never getting them back. I decided to call them the Wicked Sisters, the Wicked Stepsisters, because obviously the Wicked Sisters is Jean's hatchets in The Lies of Locke-Lamora. They're pretty wicked. I'm planning on getting a pair myself because these are amazing. Hello everyone, my name is May and welcome back to me. This is all exciting. It's a brand new year and hopefully it might be better, right? Yay! My parents are currently renovating, hence why I'm sitting with a ton of their incredibly old books that I'm fairly sure most of them were published in the late 1800s. Also, this means that the Christmas tree is down and I cannot film with the Christmas tree. This is my favourite annual video to film, I think. So, let's get in close, let's do some books. I've reread quite a lot of books in 2020. I think maybe it was just I needed lots of comfort because the world was going to crap, and so therefore I needed lots of comfort reads, and therefore I reread a lot of my favourite books. So some of them are on this list, but I'm actually first going to go through the books that were new reads that were my favourite books, and then we'll get onto those tasty morsels that were rereads that I still love and they're the best thing ever in the world. 2020, I read 39 books and I was this close to reading 40. That's the most I've ever read in the years I've been tracking how many books I've read a year. Among those top favourites, I have decided to pick, and now I need to count them, 8 books, some of those books including series, as my top reads. Because if I read 39 books, that means there are a lot there that I liked, because I don't tend to read books that I don't think I'm gonna like, because I only have a certain amount of reading time, and hence why the worst reads is always such a dramatic video. Let's get on to one that quite clearly topped the charts. It was just so good, and that was the Archivist Cythe trilogy by Neil Shusterman, starting with Cythe, then Thunderhead, and then finally The Toll. This trilogy just blew my mind. I loved it so much. If you don't know what this series is about, post-death society where they've conquered disease and they've conquered death, and they know how to bring people back to life if they die. Even if you go like splat on the road, they can stitch you all back together. Have an AI in the sky, basically all of the computers merged into like one big AI, and then the cloud just became one big incredibly intelligent being that takes care of everything. AI in this story, or at least in the first one, I won't give away anything else, but at least in the first one, it's a benevolent being, and it's really, really refreshing and nice. The problem that is left is the fact that because there is no cap on how many people are allowed to be, population is still an issue, and they weren't able to colonize the moon, so they're just stuck on Earth. So they have these people called sides, which glean certain members of the population based on statistics, or at least that's what they're meant to do, and they glean a certain amount of people each year. And then we follow 2 people that become sides apprentices. We follow Citra and Rowan, and neither of them want to become sides apprentices, and so they're both kind of forced to fight for the place of who's going to be sides apprentice, but then both of them don't want to be. I definitely did not explain this as well as I have in the past, or probably will in the future, but this book is amazing and actually does like mental flips in your brain. Have read this trilogy, I would recommend going and reading like The Last Question, that short story that was written, because it has so many similar vibes and just makes you think so much. Read this book. The next book that I thoroughly enjoyed and got an easy 5 stars from me, this is a Terry Pratchett that I read, and this is Nation. One of the best depictions, I think, of people from different languages and different cultures trying to communicate and get on, obviously in an island setting, because this is set on an island. Basically, this is set in like an alternate kings and queens, King Henry VIII almost era kind of thing, and there's one ship that has a fine lady or fine gentleman's daughter crossing over to some of the newfound island areas, and then we have an island boy who is off on the ritual that boy takes to become a man, and while he's away, a massive tsunami comes and washes away his entire nation. This tsunami also catches the boat and wrecks the boat, and so these 2 unlikely friends meet and start not exactly getting on. It's just such an incredibly hilarious book, for one, but also very thought-provoking. It really embraces this idea of these 2 don't speak each other's language, and what are they going to do to conquer the fact that they can't actually speak the same language, and they don't even come from the same way of thinking. And so what are they going to do to overcome that, because communication actually transcends language. The next book that I read was one that I saw on somebody else's channel. I think I saw it on Peruse Project, Reagan's channel. Talking about this book that seemed to have this really hard magic system. And I was like, you know what? I'm currently writing a book with a hard magic system. Let's give it a hecking try. So I picked up Foundry Side by Robert Jackson Bennett. And this book was just so good. Not only did it have a female kind of romance in it, was very, very subtle, which I liked because I just finished watching She-Ra, so I was like, please, something. But also, I kind of don't like romance, the fact that it was very subtle, I was like, easy. But the hard magic system in this was just fantastic. It's kind of like a, look, I want to say like a sigildry based magic, if anyone's read Name of the Wind. Like, it's kind of writing stuff into things in an ancient language that makes things do things. So my character is called Santia. I literally just had to Google her name because I could not remember it. She is a thief. Anyway, she ends up stealing something for someone that is not something that she expected. It's something a lot more valuable than she expected, and it kind of turns everything upside down. She basically lives in a city where there's Foundry Side, where all of the down and out kind of people live, and then there's lots of sections that are owned by different guilds, basically. Anyway, so it's basically a lot of political intrigue, a lot of character intrigue, and then a lot of magic that's thrown in there. Some heist going on. It left me on quite a cliffhanger at the end, and so I remember starting the next one kind of immediately, and then I got distracted, so good on me. Knock 3 Times by Crescent de Cowell. This, I cannot describe how much I love this series. I love this series with every single ounce and pore of my being. Like, it is just, The Wizards of Once is just so cute. I have a review for the first book on my channel. This is a book that I think every single edition of this has been on my favourites list every single year since this series started, which, to be fair, there's only 3 books in it, but, you know, that's almost as long as this YouTube channel's been around. This story is just full of amazingly beautiful pictures. This third one just, there's something about these books that I think, like, takes me a bit to kind of, like, remember that I should read the book, right? So I get into reading, I'm like, oh, okay, whatever, like, I know I'll enjoy it. And then it just snaps and I cannot put the book down and I have to finish it that day. Like, that's what these books are. So the next book is one that I don't have with me, and this was one that I did not expect to like at all. I read it because my friend told me to read it because we did kind of a book swap, and I gave her a Sarah J. Maas that I'd never read and I didn't think I really would read, but I thought that she might enjoy it because she quite likes romance. And in return, she swapped me Big Little Lies by Leanne Moriarty. Big part about this book is that it's not fantasy. Like, I don't read very much non-fantasy, and then reading non-fiction happens even less. I was like, cool, mums with kids in kindergarten. Yep, that sounds like fun. I know lots of women that's their life, so I'm sure reading something like this will be very helpful for me to understand how their life is. I did not expect this book to actually hit me so hard. It hit really hard talking about abuse and the idea of nuclear families and what family should look like and what family is. Basically, this story is set at the beginning around a murder. There's a murder that's happened and you don't know who's been killed, and at the beginning of each chapter you're kind of getting little snippets of people being interviewed by the cops, and then you're kind of slowly getting the story from 3 or 6 months beforehand, up until the night and the post of the murder. It's a delightful book to read. It's a very big seller, so therefore it's surely not too hard for people to read, because then people wouldn't read it, because people don't like eating things that aren't palatable. I did not expect to like this, and I did, so good on you, Moriarty. You took me by surprise. The video was taking a lot longer than I thought, so I'm gonna have to power on really, really fast. Okay, so the next book, and you probably already guessed it, like, you just know that this is, it's Hollowpox. It's definitely Hollowpox. This book that I ranted about at the beginning of last year when they super postponed this coming out. I don't know why they did, but this book, oh, hands down, this was my favourite book of the year. Hollowpox, what to say about this book? The story is about Morrigan Crow. This is the 3rd book in the Morrigan Crow series. The first being Nevermore, the second one being Wondersmith, and now Hollowpox. If you haven't read it, I've actually got a video review for the first one, and then also a video review for the second one, and I'm gonna make a video review for the 3rd one, so you can tell I like this series. What I loved about this one, and it's actually funny because I've read more than one book this year that have been about plagues, and I don't know whether that's just entirely coincidental, but Jessica Townsend did a good job at accidentally writing a plague in the year of the plague. And not only that, she wrote a book about a plague which only affects a certain population. What did we also get? Yes. Managing to fit in both COVID and Black Lives Matter ideas into one book set for children, and accidentally, because I think she had the idea about this book years and years before it got to our shelves, the coincidence was just with her. Like, good serendipity, Townsend. I'm gonna reread it before I make my review, and it's probably gonna be long and gushy, so get ready for that. Next book is actually another non-fantasy book, and this is I Can Jump Puddles by Alan Marshall. And this was one actually I read right at the beginning of the year with my sister. I read it as a day readathon, and it just struck me in so many ways. I Can Jump Puddles is an autobiography. His parents were young Australian settlers, and basically he contracted polio and so lost all movement in his legs. He became paralyzed. This story was just incredibly fascinating, seeing his life, seeing the way people treated him and the way he looked at the world because of his disability, and it was just so incredibly heartwarming and makes me like wish there were more disability representation in the media, because he just had such a almost, I'd say, a much nicer way of looking at the world, because he was forced to kind of slow down and look at stuff a bit more clearly and didn't judge people as quickly, because he actually took time to get to know them and see who they are. And it just was the most beautiful and quaint story, and also just absolutely heartwarming. And the way he wrote it was also gorgeous. Like, some of the lines in this book, like, attack you right to the core. It also gives you a great look into the original white settler culture of Australia back then. If you don't know much about Australia, it's a fantastic intrigue into looking at kind of what Australian history was like when white people came and settled here. The amount of racism that's scattered through it, you're just like, cool casual racism, because that was just the thing back then. And I definitely just knocked the camera. The final new read that I read, and I actually might not even get into the rereads, was Oathbringer by Brandon Sanderson. So this is the third book in the Stormlight Archives. I read a lot of third books this year. Hollowpox. So, Oathbringer is the third book in the Stormlight Archive series. I actually have no idea how to describe the Stormlight Archive series. Each book is about 1,000 pages. Some of the best world building you will ever see, some of the best character development you will ever see, some of the coolest magic systems you will ever see, all construed into a very easy writing style, so you can just breeze through a book like nobody's business, because it's so easy to read and it's so well written. Just get onto it. Oathbringer, I don't think was my favourite book so far in this series. 5 stars for Oathbringer. It was fantastic. I don't have much to say about it except for That's basically what I have to say. Also, one of my favourite ships of all time did a bit of a... So, that got me mad, but that's fine. Okay, so those are all the books that were new reads that I read in 2020. Now I'm going to quickly just run through my rereads. I'm going to do a rapid fire reread. The first reread that I did was of Ninth House by Leigh Bardugo, because this is one of my favourite books of last year. I absolutely freaking love this book. I don't even know why. I think it's because it's a grown-up adult version of one of my all-time favourite series, Lockwood & Co. In fact, as soon as I finished the audio, I almost went back and started the audio all over again, because I just apparently love it that much, and I don't know why I'm trash for this book. But I just love it. Actually, it's not trash. Like, legitimately, it's not a trash book. Leigh Bardugo has written some stuff that I don't particularly like, but she's also written some stuff that I do like. So, this book was just amazing. Book that I read, I actually reread twice this year. Once because I started reading it with my housemate, and then I read it again because my family gave me a beautiful Folio Society copy. Like, honestly, this is just the most beautiful thing. It's got these gorgeous illustrations in it, and I actually voted on the poll of what illustrations were going to make it into this book. My pick didn't win the vote, but I love the pictures that have made it into this copy, and it is just so beautiful. Pages are so nice. You know, like when they're nice pages, it's perfect. I then also reread some Terry Pratchett's this year, including Going Postal and Thief of Time. These are two of my favourite Terry Pratchett books in the world, and they're just so good, and they're so funny, and they're just so cute. And it's just everything. Like, these are just all books that just made me feel good about myself, which is what I needed in 2020. So I'm just so happy that I reread these because they filled my heart with so much joy. I also reread Way of Kings and Words of Radiance, mostly because I needed to make my book talks for them, and I wasn't quite sure what the heck has happened in them. Also because I needed to reread them for reading Oathbringer. But yes, I reread those two, and then made my videos about them so I wouldn't forget what the heck has happened. I need to do the same thing with Oathbringer before I really start reading them before, or else I will forget what the heck has happened. The final 2 books that I reread were Jade City by Fonda Lee. I reread this because I wanted to read the next book, because Daniel Green on his channel had been talking about how much he really loved the entire series, and I was like, oh yeah, I remember reading Jade City and liking the first one. I then forgot to get onto the second one, but I did make my sister read Jade City. I think that's pretty good, eh? And finally, I read Twice Magic before I picked up Knock 3 Times, because I couldn't remember what happened in Twice Magic, and I needed to read Knock 3 Times. I think this is what happens when I'm reading multiple books on the go, is that I do need often a refresher course on what happened. My brain's very full. Also, maybe because I'm studying full-time. Anyway, those are all the books that I loved the bestest of all in 2020. These books brightened my year considerably and made it worth living. Tell me what books you really enjoyed in 2020. I would actually be super keen to hear. Also, let me know if there are any particular ones that you would like to see a review for. Probably just make the reviews that I feel like making reviews for. Also, just the ones that I feel the need to gush for. Cythe. Now I need to actually finally go shower my hair. Thank you guys so much for 2020. I will see you guys later. Goodbye. I reread Thief of Fonda Lee, just because I want you to know how many books that I reread that I really liked.